Okay, good morning, everybody. Okay, so we're picking up where we left off on the AIDA model from last week. Last week, we discussed attention and interest. So this week, we're going to pick up where we left off and discuss desire as part of the AIDA model. So I'll just go here to give you some context. Remember, we covered attention, which is where we focus on grabbing their attention, obviously, the goal being to create curiosity, to create disgust, to create surprise, to create delight, something that will attract their attention. And then to move on to interest being the part where we inject a key message. So from a shock and awe tactic, hey, I've grabbed your attention, to, hey, here are the benefits and features of what I'm actually talking about. This is how it will actually help you, and personalizing the message that we're trying to give to them, basically trying to make a message more relatable, and then moving on to desire. Now, in the desire phase, the goal is really to create trust. So once we've attracted their attention, we've got them interested, now we need to show them what we're offering and to gain trust so that we can generate desire. The goal is to say to them, or to get them to say, I like it, I want it. Okay, so you're going to keep serving them content. The desire phase doesn't have to happen instantly. All of this doesn't have to happen in the space of 5 seconds. Right? Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. Other times, it might take weeks, months, or even years for someone to build up to a point where they say, yes, I really want this, or maybe they want it, but they can't afford it. So the desire phase could really be the longest phase within the AIDA model, where someone wants something, but the timing isn't right. It could be, let's say, for example, yes, I really want those new shoes, but I've still got a decent pair of walking shoes. I'm not going to spend the money on that right now. So I'm still desiring it, but I don't have a compelling reason to actually take action. And so the desire phase is where, if we go back to our one-page marketing plan talk that we did a couple of months ago, we spoke about the nurturing phase, right? So this is really where we start nurturing the lead. And this is where we serve them content, like articles, social posts, YouTube videos, proposals, presentations, all of that kind of stuff. So in this phase, it's all about trust, and it's about objection handling. Questions like, do you offer finance on this? What's the onboarding procedure like? How do I make this smooth and easy to onboard? What, those sorts of metrics. How do I serve them testimonials so that they know other people have actually done this? Social proof. I made the example of talking about network effects, and social proof is a really powerful network effect. And I see it all the time. When you walk into a food court, you'll see one restaurant's always full, and there'll always be like 3 or 4 sort of empty ones. And it's not always the same one. It's usually, people walk into a food court. If it's not busy, the first person walked in and said, yes, I really feel like fried chicken today. And they went to the food court for the fried chicken. The next group of people walk in and say, I don't really know what I want. I'm just hungry. And they look around, they see the pizza, they see the burgers, they see the fried chicken, and they say, oh, I see someone else is already eating fried chicken. Guess I want that too. And that's an example of social proof becoming a cue to make a selection. So if that person's enjoying it, I'll probably enjoy it too. And so now there's 2 people sitting at that restaurant. The third person walks in, and maybe the third person actually felt like pizza, but they're like, why is this pizza restaurant empty, but the fried chicken place has some people sitting in it? Maybe there's something wrong with the pizza. Let me actually go to the fried chicken restaurant. Let me change my mind. And now there's 3 people at the fried chicken restaurant. And so it goes until there's one restaurant that's fully packed. And then maybe a group of people say, I'm not going to sit there. It's way too full. I'm going to go to the empty restaurant. Look at those fools. And so there's this constant behavioral phenomenon taking place during the desire phase that we can take advantage of as marketers. Okay, so again, the goal of this stage is to get them to say, I like it, I want it. And it's done by cementing the final piece of the puzzle, which is trust. It's probably the most difficult of all the steps, simply because creating trust, especially remotely or asynchronously, is very difficult. That's why in-person sales are still very important. And keep in mind that people still buy from people. And we need to differentiate here, because sure, the AIDA model is relevant to all sorts of marketing and all sorts of sales, but we are a B2B organization. So how are we going to create trust with clients if we don't talk to them, right? We're actually working in conjunction with our client who has to actually get the ball over the line and score the try, right? They're the ones who actually have to close the deal. I mean, if we get into the weeds and we start phoning every lead and closing them, we'll be phoning leads all day. I mean, we generate hundreds of leads every month. We can't follow up on each and every one of them. And so we work in partnership with our clients to actually close the leads. And you guys will have noticed that in our customer journeys, I've always added a personal selling channel. Even though we're not the ones pursuing that work, that is really where we interface with our clients and we give them the tools to create trust. That's our job as a B2B agency. Yes, we're creating the leads. Yes, we're creating the attention, we're creating the interest. But when it comes to the desire portion, we're really involved with nurturing the client to a point where the salesperson can close the deal. So the answer is to keep serving them content. Make sure they subscribe to our blog. Make sure they follow our social media. And that's why we'll embed, like, for example, let's say we send an email marketing message. We'll ask them, please follow us on Facebook. That's why on our websites, we ask people to follow us on Facebook or to subscribe to our newsletter. And so it's really about trying to enmesh the client in a network of channels that we can communicate with them. So the point isn't to set up a channel. The point is to generate desire by creating trust in the brand. Does that make sense? Does it make sense, right? Remember how many times I've said to you guys, we don't use Facebook for sales. We use Facebook for brand equity. That's just another way of saying we don't use Facebook to generate leads. We use Facebook to nurture leads and to generate desire and to create trust so that those leads become sales. That's all brand equity is, right? It's trust in the brand. This can be done by adding social proof. So for example, testimonials, reviews, that's why I always insist on putting the testimonials on the contact page and not on the homepage, although, there are differing opinions on that. So I'm sure that there are ways of doing it differently. Why did we make a video to highlight testimonials? I mean, by all accounts, it's not exactly the most exciting video, but if someone sees that on Facebook, instant trust, right? There's other ways to do it. I don't know if you guys have seen this. A great example would be Temu, and I'm pretty sure they fake those reviews, but every single product you go on is only 5-star reviews, and everyone's talking about how amazing the product is. So Temu has a really good way of creating that desire for the product by staging it, by creating testimonials, by putting the testimonials under your nose and constantly getting your attention. By the way, actually, now that we're talking about Temu, I mean, I'm sure all of you have shopped on Temu or at least checked it out to some extent, right? Why do they have that spin wheel when we start out? They're getting your attention. It's the A phase of the AIDA model. I mean, you don't even know what you want to buy yet, but you're excited. You're there, right? You're interested. And so they take you from attention to interest almost immediately. They're giving you some sort of reason to go and shop, and then they create the desire afterwards. Very, very clever. It's a masterclass, actually, and that's why they're so successful. So people will make judgments purely based on aesthetics and will associate good web design with a higher level of overall quality. This is a point that I make all the time. When companies put the time and effort into making a good app or a good website or a good brochure or anything like that that's really well thought out, you can actually feel it, right? You can see someone's put effort into it, and that immediately translates into trust. Because if you're the kind of company that can afford to do good marketing, you're probably the kind of company that I can trust to do a good job with the rest of the thing. And so good marketing, advertising, design, all of that stuff becomes a proxy for the experience that they might have in the future. And this is what separates us from the animals, right? We've got a frontal lobe, and our frontal lobe can predict things. That's how math works, right? That's how language works. We can actually think into the future and imagine something without having to experience it. I mean, if I said to you, do you like bubblegum ice cream?
No.
You don't like that. When's the last time you had one?
When I was like 7.
So how do you know you haven't changed your mind yet?
I don't know. It's just I had a bad experience when I had it, so I don't want it again.
Your frontal lobe is telling you, oh, I don't have to try it. I know I don't like it. What if I asked you, would you like some chicken liver and onion ice cream?
No.
You've never tried it. How would you know?
Sounds good. Look, onion and liver, that will go well together.
Right?
Yeah.
How did you know it's bad? Your frontal lobe was like, huh? That just doesn't make sense. You didn't have to try it to imagine it, and your imagination showed you that you're not going to like that, right? It told you, oh, Dan, hell no. It actually reminds me of Amy. She's doing this very similar sort of thing where they do funny combination. The one's yummy and the other one's yucky. And now every time she walks around in the house and she doesn't like something, she says, no, yucky. No, yucky. It's like, Amy, can I comb your hair? You look like Daisy the Malkin. No, yucky. So the same sort of thing, right? And I find it fascinating because it's Amy developing her mental ability to sort of predict things in the future and to say, I don't think I'm going to like that. No, yucky. And so that's really what separates us from the animals. It's our ability to think about something and to experience it mentally and to use proxies to draw a conclusion and to say, okay, I don't think I'm going to like this. I'm rather going to stay away. And so good design is sort of the opposite of that, right? If you're looking at a beautifully designed website that loads quickly, that's easy to use, all of that kind of stuff, you're getting to the answer in your mind because you're simulating the experience you're going to have with that company when you actually buy the service. And so that's why we put a lot of time and effort into making sure things are aesthetically pleasing and brand consistent. That's a whole other talk, is consistency, and we'll talk about that on another occasion. But good design and good branding acts as a proxy for the experience you will have with a company. So the actual product must look good, preferably. If you're selling something, it should probably be a high quality product. And we want enticing imagery, right? If I showed you what a McDonald's burger really looked like, you'd probably never buy one. But if I showed you the beautifully staged McDonald's burger with the steam coming off of it, and they inject the patties with water to make them look bigger, they literally blow steam through it when they take the photo to make it look hot and fresh and all. I mean, the chips always look great in the ad, and then when you get them, they're these limp, sort of very sad chippies. And so it's very rare to actually find that the advert actually matches the reality. But the advertising should feel enticing. And this is difficult for us as B2B, right? How do you make IT look enticing? Do I have to get an IT guy, dress him up in a muscle shirt with nice big muscles and have him furiously typing away at a keyboard? I mean, it's not the IT that's enticing, then it's the IT guy that's enticing, right? Which is another way of sort of creating proxies. But you get my point, right? Is IT is difficult. How do I make an accounting firm seem enticing? It's difficult, right? And that's why B2B is an underserved market. Okay, so I think we've covered desire, but I just want to quickly discuss the measurement of desire. We want to look at returning visitors. So if I've looked at a product, I want to say, I want this product, but I can't afford it now, or I want this product, but I've still got a working one, or I want this product, but I don't want to buy it because I'm embarrassed. But if you think about McDonald's, one of the smartest moves they made, and one of the dumbest moves, in my opinion, is that they moved ordering away so that you could order on the app or order on a screen. You just pick up at the counter. And something that I think is really intelligent about that is men often want more than one burger. They'll order 2 burgers and fries and a drink, right? So they'll have 1 meal and an extra burger. But if you're ordering at the counter, you don't want to be judged by the person behind the counter. So you just order 1 and you're left feeling a little bit hungry when you leave. Where if you're ordering from a screen, it's an impersonal interaction, and so you don't feel judgment. So you'll order whatever you want. So that's really clever. But on the other hand, they've removed the upsell opportunity of a person actually asking you if you want something else. Again, very interesting sort of thing. But the idea here is that if you desire a product, you will go back and you'll visit the page. Even if you know you don't have the money right now, or you know that you've still got something in stock, you'll still go and look at it to say, maybe I can buy it right now. A good example of this would be, I'm currently renovating a house, and I've been working on this house for the last 2 years and everything. So I want to build a stoop onto my house. It's something that I've wanted to do since the beginning, but I didn't have enough capital. And so I've been saving up for this. And every month I actually open up the building plans and I look at it and I look at the bank statements and I'm like, have I saved up enough? And I'm almost at the point where I want to say, hell, I'm so tired of looking at this damn building plan. I'm just going to take a loan from the bank and get this done because I want that strip. I desire that thing. And so I've really just marketed myself into doing this whole thing. But the idea is to measure returning visitors. So you know that when you're looking at the dashboards, we can see how many sessions were opened on a website, but we can also see how many of those are new users. And if we've got a very high session rate versus new user rate, we know that we're creating desire for the product. On-site search, also pretty important. If someone's going onto the website and they're looking for a specific product over and over, a way to look at that is also to look at the top pages of a website. So what pages are being looked at over and over? Now, again, with B2B, this is a very interesting mindset, right? And I want you guys to pay attention to this part specifically, because the AIDA model is great for B2C. But in B2B, it needs to be applied differently. It's still valid, but you need to think about it differently. So if someone's buying a commodity that's going to become part of another product that they're manufacturing, they're not buying the product because they desire it, right? If I'm going to buy some steel because I need to make a cylinder, I'm not buying the steel because I desire the steel. I'm buying the steel because I desire to sell the thing that I'm making so that I can make money out of it, right? And so the psychology of B2B is very different, because the desire is not for the product itself, but rather for the outcome that the product provides. And so if you want to go back to the interest phase and all of that, the interest is not in the product, but rather in what the product can do for me, how the product is delivered, rather in avoiding certain unnecessary or unwanted outcomes. So can you deliver on time? Will I be able to get this piece of steel in the workshop so that I can work on it with enough time to spare so that I can deliver the job and keep to the promise that I made to my client? Right, so I've got a job to do. Client gave me a thing to fix. I need some components for it. I'm going to phone up my suppliers. I'm not going to consider price necessarily as the most important driver, but rather the promise that I made to my client. Can I keep it if I work with the supplier? Does this make sense to you guys? And so I often say this in B2B, and this is not always the case, but just think about this a little bit. In B2B, you're really working with someone whose goal is not to benefit from the product, but rather their goal is to perform well enough not to get fired. Their goal is to be unfireable. And so they're using the supplier as not only the supplier of the product, but they're relying on the supplier to help them keep promises. If the boss says, hey, I need that steel in the factory by this afternoon, that buyer, that person who's making the purchase decision, is picking up the phone, he's getting quotes from 3 companies, he's got to get it done as quickly as possible. Chances are the company that gets the first quote in is the one who's going to get the work, because it's a time-sensitive issue. Price is not a factor. Does this make sense? Okay. And so the buyer, they're protecting their employment. They don't care because they're not spending their own money, right? The boss of the company that the buyer works for, if the buyer doesn't have the steel in the workshop in the afternoon as the boss wanted, what's the boss going to do? The boss is going to storm into the office and say, why don't you have my product? I need to get this job out. And you said you'd get it. And the boss is really upset and angry and all of that, right? And so that's a threat to the buyer's position as an employed individual, someone with gainly employment. Their status in society is under threat, right? I won't be able to pay my kids' school fees if I don't have this job, right? And so our job as marketers in the B2B space is to deal with that anxiety. Remember what I said about joining the conversation that's already going on in the client's mind. That's the conversation that's going on in the buyer's mind. Am I going to be able to get the product here in time with the right quality, with the right spec, so that my boss doesn't get angry with me? That's what it's about. Not in all situations, but definitely in a large volume of them in the B2B space. And so the anxiety has very little to do with price, but usually about availability, deliverability, service, speed, those sorts of things. And that's why I always say marketing on price is the laziest form of marketing. Okay, so moving on to measurement here. So the percentage of search exits should be greater than bounces, and the percentage of search refinements. So the question is, do they go to the home page? From the homepage, do they navigate to a category page? From the category page, do they navigate to a specific product page? And that would be a refinement of the search to get to where they want to go. I mean, you guys have all seen how I write website copy. There's usually a homepage that describes the whole business. Then there'll be a category page or a number of category pages that sort of gives them the option to refine their search and find what they're looking for. And there's a reason for that, right? It's because I'm working in the AIDA model. I want them to be able to refine their search and find what they're looking for easily. And those are the things that we're measuring. Okay, and this is obviously where I thought I would start the talk today. Now you get to look at the roadmap again. Let's move on to action. Okay, so after generating enough desire, you need to give the prospect a chance to act on their desire. And that's usually a call to action. Contact us today, book a meeting, download our free trial, whatever the case may be. And the goal is to get them to say, I'm going to get this. So let's go here. Remember, the first goal was, hey, what is this? Right? Just grab their attention. Then, that's quite interesting. I like it. And then desire is, I actually want this. I want to buy this. And then moving over to the next phase, which is, screw it, let's do it. I'm getting this. And my example of how I don't even care if I need to get a bank loan at this point, but I'm going to build this damn stock, right? I'm getting it. I don't care what the costs are. And from there, the next step is to compel them to respond with a low friction but high incentive call to action. So what do we mean by low friction? If you say, contact us today, and we're going to send you 6 forms to complete, and it's going to be really, really tough because we're going to ask you a bunch of personal questions, and only then will we consider actually making you a quote. Are you going to click that button? We use Naked Insurance as an example. Naked Insurance says, naked people don't do admin. What's the point of that? Of course they're going to do admin. Do you think having insurance isn't going to have admin? Of course you're going to have admin. But they're creating a low friction, high incentive call to action. If I'm with Naked, I'm not going to have to do admin. Nonsense. Of course, you're going to have to end up signing paperwork and keeping book of it. And how are they going to insure you without understanding what they're insuring? Right? It's nonsense. They're lying. But they're creating low friction, high incentive call to action. So if we say to a company, click here so that you can complete this really complicated form, or do we say, getting what you need is as simple as 3 easy steps. Click the button, complete the form, and have all of your problems solved. Hell, we'll even resolve the fight with your wife. No problem. We'll do whatever we have to get you to complete this damn form. It's about making it inviting, but also aesthetically pleasing. And the mistake I see often is people have too many call to actions. So, they read the AIDA model. They don't really think about everything. They just look at the action portion and they're like, oh, call to action. That's what I need to do. And they add 20,000 call to actions. And it's confusing. And remember, one lesson in marketing, this is the golden rule in marketing. If you confuse them, you lose them. A page shouldn't have multiple call to actions. It should be one call to action per page. One call to action per page. If you confuse them, you lose them. Keep the message simple. That's why we don't add more than one call to action to a social post. That's why we don't add a block of text to a social post. That's why we keep the messaging really, really, really simple. And we try and keep it appealing. A bright color works, especially color isolation. So if everything's blue, make the button yellow. If everything's blue, make the button red. If everything's blue, make the button green. As long as it's an isolated color that's easy to spot. And what I like to do is I like to make all the interactive elements the same on a website. So if I'm going to make the buttons red, all the buttons are red. I try and make the hover over effect the same for everything, because subconsciously, once you figure out that something is interactive and you see the same interactive element that looks the same, you're going to know that you can interact with that element without actually having interacted with it. And so we use design as a proxy. Remember that frontal lobe action that I'm talking about, where you're estimating or guesstimating what the outcome is going to be if you form some sort of, or create some sort of action. Something to keep in mind is also direct wording. So the button shouldn't be ambiguous. It shouldn't say, you might want to click here. Be specific. Click here to book a meeting. And it gets complicated because a lot of people do it differently, where they'll say something like, click here to solve all your problems. Obviously, it's not worded like that exactly, but it'll be too vague because they're actually leaping ahead to the benefit or leaping ahead to the thing they're going to get after the action is taken. And so there's really a balance. And it's not a science, although that argument can be made. There is a lot of artistry to this, and understanding the target audience and talking to the target audience and saying to them, these are the things that I want you to do. And remember, if you confuse them, you lose them. So keep it really straightforward. Again, you don't want to overwhelm them. You want a good balance. You want to have enough call to action so that they actually see what's expected of them, but not so much that they feel like you're being pushy about it. So I think about 2 or 3 in visual space is good at any given point. That's probably the max that you should aim for. And then finally, make it easy to pull the trigger. It shouldn't feel like it's going to be this drama once you click the button. And then moving on to the measurement in the action phase. So you need to ensure that the core goals of the website are tracked and optimized. So what do we want this web page to do? Do we want people to download a PDF document? Do we want people to sign up for a free trial? Do we want people to book a discovery meeting? Do we want someone to complete a form and tell us what's going on? And so those are the things we measure. And so you'll all know that I say all metrics are vanity metrics. The only metric that matters is sales, because that's why we're here. We're here to help our clients sell products. But if you want insight into where sales come from, why sales are happening, or why sales are not happening, then you start tracking back. And I like to look at the bottom of the funnel first and then work my way up, because I find that trying to work from the top down, you're sort of being led down a lot of rabbit holes of assumptions that you're making. Whereas if you start from the bottom up, you're usually following a more concrete trail. And so that's what we're measuring at this phase, is how many leads did we generate? How many sales did we generate? How many free trials did people sign on for, and so on. Okay, and that's pretty much the AIDA model in a nutshell. And I wanted to finish a little bit earlier so that we have about 15 minutes for questions. And I wanted to ask 2 questions. The first one would be, how can you apply AIDA in your role? How can you apply AIDA in your role in the business? Let's start with the branding team. Julia, Stuart, how can you guys apply AIDA?
You can apply AIDA by first learning all your customer client and then creating your design all around how you to create desire and the action stuff to pull it through.
For you and Stuart, this stuff is like par for the course, right? This is what you're doing all day.
Yep, definitely is.
Cool. Let's ask the marketing team. Let's maybe start with Marlies.
So in MailChimp, what I do, it's actually what we already do, but the subject line and the preview text should be compelling. It should be something that interests people. I usually get emails in my email box like, get 20% off, or do you want to know more about this? And then it's actually something that I want to read. It's not necessarily something that I would have gone and Googled, but when I get the email in my inbox, and then obviously there's relevant content in the mail with a call to action.
100%. So I read a newsletter by Alan Dibb, the guy who wrote the one-page marketing plan, and I read almost every single mail that he sends out. And I'm always fascinated by his subject lines. His subject line will say something like, someone cheated on me, right? It's like, oh, instant drama. What happened? It's I don't even think about it, and then I click and I'm reading the mail. But he'll always have this sort of drama ensuing sort of leading statement in his subject lines. And I think that's quite fascinating. Ruan, where do you think you can apply AIDA in your role?
Okay, so if you have a attention-grabbing ad headline that kind of speaks to whatever the need is, but in an interesting way, and then the website also has to correlate with that, because let's say your website isn't as interesting as the ad is, then you're going to lose them. So your on-page SEO and your website page and your ad kind of has to, meet in the middle. They have to be synergized, they have to be connected. So, yeah, and like attention-grabbing blog headline, not just something boring, something that is thought-provoking and even sometimes offensive, or, that's even in the rank math tool. They would say that you need to have like a compelling word, something that grabs attention.
Power words, right?
Power words, yes. That's what it is. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think power words can really, like, there's multiple phases to this, right? Because remember what I said about the AIDA model is it can be applied in a micro context or in a macro context, and usually both. it's fractal, right? So in your ad, you're going to have the AIDA model as in you've got your heading 1, then you've got your heading 2, then you've got your call out, then you've got your extension. And you can apply AIDA to that. But now in the macro sense, or let's take the website, which would be the next step. If they click on the ad, they get to the landing page. There you've got AIDA again in the landing page or in the blog post or whatever it is that you're promoting. But those things are also phases in a sort of a macro AIDA where, yes, attention is the first step. They're moving on to the web page. Again, they're getting their attention, interest, desire, action, but they're actually in more of an interest phase because they haven't even submitted the lead yet. They haven't taken the action we want them to. And so it's happening on a micro level with every interaction, but it's also happening on a macro level where we're sort of guiding them through a customer journey, which, you know, people call a funnel or whatever the case may be. So the way I would actually think about it is you've got really 4 AIDAs. You've got an AIDA with the focus on, so in the sort of macro AIDA, if we could call it that, you've got your first piece of content where the focus is going to be heavily placed on the attention portion. Then you've got your second AIDA where the attention is going to be focused heavily on the interest portion. Then you've got a third AIDA where the desire portion is going to be really big. And that might be multiple pieces of content, right? It might be a mail, it might be a social post, it might be a blog post, it might be whatever the case may be. And then you'll have a button on all of those that really focus on the action portion. And so it's fractal in its nature. Duane, where do you think you can apply AIDA in your day-to-day tasks?
I'm so busy with the ads. I agree with Ruan, like the headings should be attention grabbing. The client, the person reading that ad should show interest, obviously, go to the website to generate leads and everything. But yeah, the headings and the ads are very important. Like you said, the power words or keywords and everything.
There's another thing I was thinking about, Duane, which we've been attracting a lot of leads from people actually looking for jobs. And what I was thinking about was, how do I inverse apply AIDA to discourage job seekers? So in other words, how do I make the ad, the call to action or the ad that I'm showing clear that this is not for job seekers? Yes, Tashana?
Unemployment rate is disgusting. So I think regardless of what you're selling or what you're doing, people will send their CV through. I think if they even just find your cell phone number and an email address somewhere, they're going to send it through.
100%. Jody, how about you?
I agree with the title of things, especially when it comes to blog articles. And I have mentioned it to Marilise and Ruan before that we should, not that I agree with some of them, but like we should do like a catfish title, because that's what takes my attention. The example that I gave them is I saw an article that said the Harry Potter era is coming to an end. And I was like, what? They're just ending it. What's happening? I'm so confused. I'm like, this can't be. This is the end of my world. And I read it and it literally just said, people are not just liking the main character, Harry Potter, but they're starting to like other characters as well. So when they said the Harry Potter era, they're talking about the specific person and not about the franchise. So I was like, but I need to read this. And I was like, oh, okay. I did not expect that. I expect to read like the ending Harry Potter. This is the end of the world. Gone, finish. So I think that articles should go more catfishy in a way, if I can say that, to lure people in.
I get what you're saying. So, and that's where we need to strike a balance, grabbing attention, but not bamboozle people. It should lead in. But what you're talking about is using ambiguity, right? They were being ambiguous, and that you made an assumption and you went to read, but the article was actually accurate. And then you realized, oh, I was the one who made the incorrect assumption. And now I've read the article, which it's a fine line, Jody. It's a very fine line. And that's the difficult thing. I mean, we could just start every single one of our mails with click here for sexy pics of welding machine. Hey. So we don't want to go into the realm of unethical marketing, because I think that's dangerous. But we do want to be in a space where we are grabbing attention in a classy way. So we'll have classy, sexy pics. Okay, so anyway, moving on from that, I want to ask the accounts team, how can we use AIDA?
Specifically for customer journey, reconciling different channels and touch points and identifying which of those channels are for attention and interest and which of the others are for desire and action. That helps you consolidate like which aspects of work and outputs are relevant to those different touch points and how you can communicate that with your client's customer.
Jono, also in briefing,
Yeah.
right? If we can brief our teams correctly by saying the goal of this is to create attention, or the goal of this is to generate interest, or the goal of this is to create desire, and we can reference AIDA, that really helps the briefing, right? The cool thing about AIDA is it's really a Swiss Army knife. You could apply it to almost anything. And yes, Nicole, it applies to learning as well. Like if you can grab people's attention when you're presenting the courses to them, and then get them interested, and then get them to desire the outcome, I think there's a lot to be said for that. The whole idea of micro-learning experiences was so that we could wrap AIDA into the whole process in a fractal way, right? So that they do one course because the boss forces them to, but then they actually feel kind of good about it, so then they keep going, and they keep trying to learn more things. And we're really trying to go for volume. Right? We want them to earn 20 certificates because it makes them feel smart. And they are smart for doing that. But it's all in sort of trying to apply these theories. And yes, Asha, I think that in quality, especially clarifying what exactly we want out of a piece of content will actually help a lot in terms of the quality of output. So I'm going to end with this, just a little, call it an ice maker, not really an icebreaker, because we're closing off with this one. But I'll just leave you guys with this, and then we can have the rest of our day. Okay. Think attention. See how people are looking at it. Attention, interest, desire, action. Have a look at how the cyclist goes fast and then comes back. That's desire in action. Attention, interest.
Yes, that's a good ad.
So notice the fractal that I was talking about. There was the button, and the button had AIDA. Then there was the whole, the show that they put up. That was AIDA. And then there was the call to action at the end, which is, hey, get a subscription to TNT. And that was the actual action that they were looking at. And so you've got these sort of fractal patterns of AIDA being applied in different phases, and then the finality of the sort of bigger picture coming together. And so something that I believe we do well as a team is we're modular in that each person is busy with their own thing, but we bring it all together in a bigger picture. I think that's something that Xponent does exceptionally well. And each person's just doing their thing, right? It's like, oh, I'm just doing my thing. But that's why we have systems. That's why we have processes. That's why we consider the bigger picture. And why it's important to always ask, where does this fit in? But at the same time, to say, how do I focus on just this one thing that I'm doing? And that's the Scrum model at work, with each person doing their job well, but understanding that the goal is to score tries, right? The goal is to generate leads. The goal is to help our clients with sales. And so the way I structured the company was every person here has a goal, but all the goals actually lead to the same outcome. And that's what we measure. And so it's really in the incentive structure. It's really in why we have these talks and why we have these conversations. Does it make sense? Okay. With that, I'm going to close off the meeting. I hope you guys learned something. I hope you like the AIDA model and that you can apply it to your daily job.